I don't think I'll ever forget the look on Vanessa's face the moment I told her I was done. It wasn't the kind of look I expected. I thought she'd cry, beg, maybe even get mad, something, anything. But instead, she just smiled. It was creepy, honestly, like she was planning something and I was the last one to figure it out. Little did I know the worst was yet to come. It wasn't always like this. In the beginning, things were different. Vanessa and I clicked. She was cute, funny, outgoing, everything I was looking for. But over time, something changed. I don't know when it started exactly, but she began to control everything. What I wore, what I ate, who I hung out with, it all revolved around her. At first, I let it slide. I figured she was just really into me, but eventually, I realized it wasn't just that. It was more like she was trying to shape me into something I wasn't, something I never wanted to be. We went out for dinner that night. Well, she insisted. I didn't even want to go, but Vanessa didn't really give you the option of saying no. We ended up at this place downtown, a little too fancy for my taste, but she was all over it. She liked to pretend she was a food critic, so she ordered for both of us without even asking me what I wanted. I didn't mind at first. It wasn't a big deal. But when the food came, she flipped. Apparently, I messed up the order, or maybe the waiter did, I'm not really sure. But Vanessa made it my fault. She yelled at the waiter, then turned to me, her eyes wide with fury, like I'd done something criminal. She told me I couldn't even get her order right, that I didn't care enough to pay attention. She started making a scene, talking about how I always messed things up, how everything was always about me and never about her. The whole restaurant was staring. It was embarrassing. I sat there, barely touching my food, feeling like I was suffocating. I had to get out of there. I knew I had to. But the thought of confronting her, of ending it, scared me. She had this hold on me. It wasn't just emotional manipulation anymore. It was like she had some kind of power over me that I couldn't escape. But I'd had enough. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor, and told her I was done. She didn't scream. She didn't beg. She just smiled, like she already knew it was coming. There was this coldness in her eyes, something that made my stomach drop. It didn't feel like a breakup. It felt like a warning. I couldn't explain it at the time, but I had this nagging feeling that I'd made a huge mistake. I paid the check quickly, grabbed my jacket, and left. Vanessa didn't say a word. She didn't even try to stop me. It was like she knew I was leaving for good and she was fine with it. I should have been relieved, but instead, all I could think about was that smile. I still don't know what it meant. When I got home, I tried to shake it off. I locked the door, turned on the TV, and tried to settle in for a quiet night. But I couldn't relax. I kept thinking about Vanessa, about how things had gone so wrong between us. I thought of the time she controlled my every move, of the time she gaslighted me into believing I was the one at fault. I thought about how I was finally free. Or so I thought. That's when I heard it. It wasn't a crash at first. At first, I thought maybe it was just the wind or a car backfiring. But then it happened again. A loud, unmistakable bang, followed by the sound of metal twisting and glass shattering. Before I could even move, the front of my living room wall exploded inwards. I saw headlights. Then a car, my ex-car, came tearing through the room, smashing through the drywall and leaving a trail of destruction in its wake. For a moment, I just stood there, frozen, staring at the wreckage. The car had come to a stop right in the middle of my living room, its engine sputtering. And then, as if it was the most normal thing in the world, Vanessa climbed out of the driver's side door, completely unharmed. She didn't seem shaken. She wasn't even angry. She just looked at me like I was the one who'd done something wrong. I felt the blood drain from my face. I had no idea what to do. What was she thinking? Why was she here? What was she going to do next? I couldn't move. I was paralyzed, just staring at her, waiting for something, anything to happen. Then she took a step toward me, and another. Slowly, as though nothing had happened, as if crashing the car into my house wasn't the insane thing to do, she moved closer, eyes locked on mine. She was calm. Too calm. I couldn't take it anymore. I snapped out of my daze and backed up, but the wall was behind me. There was no way out. I was trapped. My heart pounded in my chest as she advanced, her face unreadable. She didn't speak. She didn't yell. It was like she didn't need to. I felt her presence suffocating me, every step she took making the room feel smaller, darker, colder. She stopped just a few feet away from me, still smiling that weird, cold smile. It was like she was daring me to say something, to make a move. I couldn't. My legs wouldn't work. My body was frozen in place. I had no idea what she was capable of, but I could feel the danger. I could feel the tension, and it was building. Suddenly, she lunged forward, grabbing at me, pushing me against the wall. I tried to fight back, but it was like she was stronger than I remembered. She shoved me down onto the floor, her hands gripping my shirt, her nails digging into my skin. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. And then, just as quickly as it started, it stopped. Vanessa let go of me and stepped back, staring down at me like she had just won some kind of twisted game. She didn't say anything. She just looked at me one last time with that unsettling smile before turning and walking out of my house, leaving the wrecked car behind her. I don't know how long I sat there dazed, unsure of what had just happened. But I knew one thing for sure. I hadn't seen the last of her. I've never been the type to believe in creepy, scary stories. You know, the ones where the ex shows up at your house or breaks in to beg for you back in the middle of the night. I always thought those were just stories to freak people out. But honestly, after what happened to me with Kyle, I don't know what to think anymore. Sometimes I wish I could go back to thinking that nothing like that could ever really happen, but this, it was real. It started when I found out he was cheating on me. It wasn't anything dramatic at first, no obvious signs or big confrontations. I just happened to find out. I was at his place one night, just sitting on his bed while he was in the bathroom. His phone was on the nightstand, buzzing nonstop. I didn't think much of it, but then I noticed the name on the screen. I didn't recognize it, and I didn't think much about it until it buzzed again. I looked at it. I shouldn't have, but I did. The texts were pretty straightforward, honestly. I don't think I even needed to read much more than the first few to get the picture. They were flirty, more than a little inappropriate, and it wasn't the first time either. I could tell from the way they spoke that this wasn't some one-time mistake. They'd been talking for weeks. I couldn't breathe. I felt my heart drop, my stomach turning into knots. I knew it wasn't right, but I didn't know what to do. I tried to close the phone, but my hands were shaking too much. I heard him coming out of the bathroom and quickly slipped the phone back onto the nightstand, hoping he didn't notice anything. But he did. Of course he did. He wasn't stupid, and when I tried to avoid looking him in the eye, he knew something was up. The whole night was a blur after that. I don't even remember how the conversation started, but it was like everything I'd suspected was confirmed. Kyle didn't even try to deny it. He didn't beg, he didn't apologize. He just sort of shrugged like it wasn't a big deal. I don't even think I made it through the night without telling him we were done. I couldn't even look at him anymore, let alone stay in the same room. I was too hurt, too angry. I just grabbed my things and left without another word. That night, after everything with Kyle ended, I went home and locked myself in my room. It felt weird, like the weight of it hadn't hit me yet. I tried to sleep, but I kept replaying the whole situation over and over in my head. I couldn't get past how calm he had been about the whole thing, how he didn't even seem to care. Eventually, I fell asleep, but that was the start of the weirdest night of my life. I woke up sometime around 3 a.m. to the sound of my door creaking open. At first, I thought I was dreaming, but then I heard it again, a soft thud of footsteps. I froze, unsure if I was just hearing things. It was dark in my room, and I had this weird feeling like I was being watched. I told myself it was nothing, just my imagination. But the footsteps got closer, and then I heard a soft voice calling my name. It wasn't loud or frantic. It was almost too calm, like someone was trying to keep their presence low, but still wanted to get your attention. That's when I knew something was wrong. I sat up in bed, heart racing. The sound was definitely real. I could hear him, Hal, standing just outside my door. I didn't want to believe it at first, but the more I listened, the more I knew it was him. He was here. In my house, in my room. I didn't know what to do. I should have screamed. I should have locked the door or gotten up and run out of the house, but I was frozen. My mind was spinning too fast, trying to process what was going on. He was in my house, and he wasn't supposed to be. Then I heard the door slowly push open. Kyle stepped into my room, his face half lit by the faint light coming through the curtains. I could barely make out the outline of him, but I didn't need to see his face to know who it was. I could hear his breathing, steady but quick, like he was trying to control himself. I knew then that this wasn't going to be some casual apology. This was something else. He didn't say anything at first. He just stood there looking at me, and that's when the dread really kicked in. I felt trapped. I wanted to scream, to call for help, but my mouth felt dry. It was like my body just couldn't move. After what felt like forever, he finally spoke, his voice soft and desperate, but I didn't even wait to hear the words. The panic hit me all at once. I shot out of bed, grabbed my phone from the nightstand, and dialed the police. I didn't even explain everything clearly when they picked up. I just told them Kyle was in my house and I needed help. I was shaking, the phone slipping in my hands as I tried to stay calm. I could hear him moving around the room, pacing, muttering to himself. He sounded like he was trying to make sense of what was going on, but it was clear he wasn't thinking straight. I could hear his footsteps getting closer, and that's when I ran for the door. I didn't care about anything anymore. I just needed to get away. But before I could open it, he was right there, blocking my way. I couldn't even look at him anymore. I just backed up, hoping he would leave. And then, almost as if he sensed that he was losing control, he reached out and grabbed my wrist, pulling me toward him. I couldn't breathe. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt. I fought back, trying to push him away, but he was stronger than I realized. I could feel his grip tightening, and it felt like I was going to snap in half. But then, a sound I will never forget, the sound of sirens. Kyle froze. His face went pale, and his grip loosened just enough for me to yank my wrist out of his hand. I bolted for the door, and just as I made it outside, the police arrived. They didn't need any explanation. They saw Kyle standing in my doorway, and they rushed in, dragging him out of the house. I didn't say another word to him after that. I didn't have to. The officers told me I did the right thing by calling them, that I wasn't safe with him there. But I didn't feel safe anymore. Kyle wasn't just someone I had dated. He was a person who, despite everything, didn't know how to let go. And I don't know if he'll ever get the message that we're truly done. There's always this moment, the one where you know something is about to go way south, and you can't really back out anymore. I had that moment the night I broke up with Maddie. I had no idea just how bad it was going to get, but looking back, I can feel it in my gut. Everything felt off from the start. I should trusted that feeling. Maddie and I had been together for a little over a year. We were in that phase where everything had started to get stale. It wasn't like we hated each other, but we weren't exactly lighting up each other's worlds anymore. The little things she did started to annoy me, and the little things I did annoyed her. You know how it goes. But I didn't want to hurt her, so I dragged my feet, letting it go on longer than it should have. Finally, I couldn't pretend anymore. I had to end it. I figured we'd talk it out, she'd cry a little, and we'd both move on. It seemed simple enough. I picked her up that evening, told her I needed to talk. We went to this quiet spot in the park where we used to hang out, sitting on a bench by the pond. There was a slight chill in the air, but nothing unbearable. We sat there for a bit, kind of in silence. I didn't know how to start, so I just blurted it out, saying something like, "I think we need to break up." Her face changed in an instant. The moment the words left my mouth, I knew I had made a huge mistake in how I'd handled it. She didn't say anything at first. She just stared at me, her face going pale. Then, just like that, the tears started. I don't know why, but it hit me harder than I thought it would. She was bawling her eyes out, her face red, mascara smudging down her cheeks. I didn't know what to do. I was just frozen there, watching her fall apart. I kept thinking, what did I expect? But I didn't even get a chance to apologize or explain myself. She jumped up from the bench, storming off toward her car. I could see her shaking in the dark, her body trembling with each step she took. I wanted to call out to her, but it felt like it was already too late. I stayed there for a while, letting the guilt settle in. The sound of the wind rustling through the trees and the soft ripples of the pond were the only things that filled the silence. My mind was racing. I should have handled it better. I should have been kinder. But it was too late to change it now. I had barely started to walk back to my car when I saw her phone buzz in my pocket. It was a text from Maddie's dad. At first, I thought it was just a dad checking in on his daughter, making sure she was okay. But I didn't get the vibe that this was a normal dad and sad message. No, this felt like a warning. It was a single line, "You've made a huge mistake. I'll be seeing you soon." I didn't have time to process what that even meant before I saw headlights approaching in my rearview mirror. My heart skipped a beat. It was Maddie's dad, and judging by the group of cars behind him, I wasn't exactly dealing with just him. He had brought a few of his friends along. I knew who they were. They weren't the type of people you wanted to cross. Maddie's dad was well known in the area. A tough guy, one who had more than a few rough connections. I didn't exactly get along with him before all this, but we kept it civil. This wasn't going to be a civil situation, though. I started my car and slammed the pedal to the floor, the tires screeching as I took off. I didn't know what kind of trouble I was about to get into. I wasn't going to wait around to find out. The headlights behind me got closer, and I could see a couple of Maddie's dad's friends' cars in my rearview mirror. It was like something out of a bad movie, a bunch of angry guys chasing after me. They weren't going to just let me go. I took a few sharp turns, trying to shake them off. But they were right behind me, not giving an inch. My hands gripped the wheel, knuckles turning white, heart pounding in my chest. I looked at the GPS on my dashboard and saw that the police station was just a few miles away. It was a long shot, but I figured if I could just make it there, I could get help. So I floored it, weaving in and out of traffic, praying the police would be able to help me out of this mess. As I pulled onto the main road leading to the station, I could see the blue lights flashing in the distance. I couldn't tell if it was my luck or just sheer desperation, but something inside of me told me I might have a shot. I looked in my rearview mirror again, and I could see the cars behind me were still hot on my tail. I slammed the gas pedal one last time, my tires screeching as I entered the parking lot of the police station. I wasn't even sure the cops would be able to stop them, but I had no choice. I threw my car in park and jumped out, running toward the doors of the station. The officers on duty saw me running and immediately stepped forward, ready to intervene. Behind me, I could hear the screeching tires and loud engines getting closer. I glanced over my shoulder and saw the group of cars pull into the lot, stopping just short of me. The officers acted fast. They radioed in for backup, and before I could even say anything, the sirens wailed and a couple of squad cars sped off after Maddie's dad and his crew. The chase was on, but now at least I wasn't the one running. I stood there, catching my breath, my mind still racing. It wasn't over. I knew that much. Even with the police involved, I wasn't sure how far this would go. But for now, I was safe. I wasn't going to let Maddie's dad and his gang of goons intimidate me. I'd made my decision, and there was no turning back. As the police sped off in pursuit, I leaned against the station wall, trying to calm down. I didn't know how this was all going to end, but I had a feeling the night was far from over. I always thought I knew Emily. She seemed normal at first, sweet, funny, a little quirky. But the deeper I got into our relationship, the more I began to see things that didn't add up. I chalked it up to my own insecurities, maybe my mind playing tricks on me. But what I found out after we broke up, it still haunts me, and I can't get rid of the feeling that I'm still not truly free. It all started when Emily and I hit a rough patch. We'd been dating for over a year, and things had slowly started to sour. Little things at first, annoyances that we both shrugged off, but they kept piling up. Eventually, it just felt like we were two strangers living in the same space, trying to make it work. We'd fight over dumb stuff, and honestly, I knew deep down that it was over. She was always a bit controlling, but I didn't want to admit it. I wanted things to be fine, but they weren't. One night, I finally told her I thought we should break up. It wasn't dramatic, no screaming or throwing things. I expected her to cry a little, maybe get upset, but not what happened next. She just sat there staring at me, like she was processing something way deeper than our relationship ending. I thought she'd be sad, but what came next was the last thing I expected. A couple of days after we broke up, I started hearing rumors, whispers from friends and mutual acquaintances. At first, I ignored it. People gossip, right? But the more I heard, the more I started to panic. Someone had posted a video online. It was a video of me, acting like I was losing control, like I was some kind of monster. And then I saw it. The comment section was full of people calling me all kinds of names. They were accusing me of being abusive. It felt like the whole world was against me. I tried to push it out of my head, thinking it would blow over, but then more videos showed up. A video of me yelling in the car, one of me looking frustrated during a dinner, and one of me throwing my hands up in frustration. Things that were completely twisted out of context. Emily had somehow gotten hold of these moments and edited them together, painting a picture that wasn't even close to the truth. At first, I figured it was some kind of sick joke. I didn't know how she had these clips, but I tried not to get too caught up in it. Then I checked the channel. That's when I realized this wasn't just a random video. It was a full-on revenge channel dedicated to airing out our relationship for everyone to see. She'd been recording everything the entire time we were together. The most personal, intimate moments we'd shared, now twisted and edited to make me look like a total villain. I couldn't believe it. She had been filming me without my knowledge. All those moments of us just hanging out, laughing, arguing, talking about our futures, everything. None of it was private. She had been using it all as material for her twisted online channel. Every conversation, every time I was vulnerable, was used to fuel whatever sick narrative she had in her head. And it didn't stop there. Emily didn't just let the videos sit online. She leaked them to every platform she could find. My phone was blowing up constantly with people tagging me in the posts. Friends I hadn't spoken to in months were calling, asking if the videos were real. It didn't matter what I said. Emily had made sure the narrative was out there, and I was powerless to stop it. I tried to fight back, posting my side of the story, explaining what really happened. I even contacted the website admins to try and get the videos taken down, but it didn't matter. She had a following now, and her version of events had already been set in stone. People believed her. Everyone believed her. Then the worst part came. Emily started showing up places. At first, it was small stuff, random spots around town, places I'd go to hang out or grab a coffee. I didn't think much of it at first. I thought maybe it was a coincidence, or maybe I was just paranoid. But the more I saw her, the more I realized she was following me. Every time I turned a corner, there she was, watching me, waiting for me to slip up. And the worst part, it was like she knew exactly where I'd be, like she was always a step ahead, like she was anticipating my every move. I started to get that feeling in the pit of my stomach, the kind of feeling that something was just wrong. She had somehow found out my routine. I couldn't even go to the store without seeing her standing at the end of the aisle, looking at me through the shelves. I'd be walking down the street, and I'd see her standing in the distance, her eyes locked on me. It wasn't just that she was there. She had the videos too. Every time I thought I had outrun her, every time I thought I was safe, a new video would pop up. It was like she was watching me live, waiting for me to make a mistake, to slip up. And she was ready to record it, to twist it into whatever narrative she wanted. I tried changing my routine, taking different routes home, avoiding places I used to go, but it didn't matter. She was always there. One day, I caught her outside my apartment building, standing under a streetlight, just staring up at my window. When I turned the corner, she didn't even flinch. She just stood there, smiling like she knew I was watching. It was like a game to her, and I was a pawn. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. Every time I checked my phone, there was a new video, a new post, more people calling me out. I tried reaching out to the police, but they couldn't do much. There was no proof she was stalking me, no evidence that she was the one behind the online harassment. All I had were my own fears and suspicions, and she knew it. I couldn't escape her. I couldn't escape the videos. Everywhere I went, her eyes were there, and her words were following me. It didn't matter that I tried to move on. I'd see her name pop up in the most random places. Comments under photos, random messages from people I didn't even know, all of them accusing me of things I didn't do. The videos had made me a villain in the eyes of everyone. Even my friends, the ones I thought I could trust, started distancing themselves. I thought I'd finally shaken her when I moved to a new city, hoping the change of scenery would help me breathe again. I thought I was done. But then one day, I logged into my social media and there it was. Another video, another twist of the narrative. Emily had found me, again. She was always a step ahead, and no matter where I went, no matter how hard I tried, I knew deep down that Emily had me in her grasp, that she always would. I'd never thought a breakup could spiral into something like this. When Alex and I ended things, I figured it was just the usual heartache and drama. I didn't expect it to become a nightmare. But looking back now, I realized that the real horror didn't start until after we said goodbye. Alex and I had been together for almost 2 years. I thought we were solid, even though things had started to feel a little off near the end. It wasn't a huge fight or anything, just a slow fade. We didn't connect as much, didn't talk the same way. So when I finally called it quits, I thought it was for the best. I didn't expect him to be broken up about it. He was quiet when I told him, almost too quiet, but I brushed it off. It was over, and I figured I could move on with my life. But things didn't end there. It started with the phone calls. At first, it wasn't anything strange. A couple of random numbers calling me late at night. I'd ignore them, thinking they were telemarketers or wrong numbers. But then I started hearing something. A soft whisper. My name. Not like a normal call. This felt different. Every time it sounded almost like Alex's voice, but faint, like it was coming from a distance. I tried to forget about it at first. I figured it was just my mind playing tricks on me. But the calls didn't stop. They came almost every night, and they came at the weirdest times. Always around the times Alex and I used to hang out, when he usually texted me or called me just to check in. It was like he knew when I was alone when I was thinking about him. And the voice, every single time it sounded like him. Soft, quiet, almost comforting, but there was something off about it, like it was too familiar. I tried to ignore it, but I couldn't. The more the calls came, the more I started to feel like I was being watched. Every time I went anywhere, it was like I could sense someone nearby. It wasn't like I saw anyone, but there was this weight, this presence, always lurking around the corner. It started getting into my head, making me second-guess everything. I started checking the locks on my doors more often, looking over my shoulder whenever I was out in public. It was like my whole world was closing in on me and I couldn't escape. The calls kept coming, each one more disturbing than the last. Sometimes they'd come I was in the middle of a conversation with friends, and I'd answer the phone out of habit, only to hear the whisper of my name in Alex's voice. It wasn't just the whispers either. Sometimes it was silence, complete and total silence. But that silence was worse. I could feel him there somehow. It was as if he was waiting for me to react, waiting for me to acknowledge him. It didn't take long before I started to lose my grip on reality. I began thinking back to our relationship, trying to remember the good times. I wondered if I had made a mistake. I missed the old Alex, the one who used to make me laugh, the one who was always there when I needed him. But then I remembered the way we broke up, the way it felt when I ended things. I remembered the look on his face, sad, but not surprised like he'd been expecting it. And that's when I started to get paranoid. The calls seemed to happen more often, always tied to specific moments when Alex and I were together. The first time he called, it was right after I had gone to bed, just like we used to do when we were together. The second time, it was after I had a fight with a friend, and Alex used to be the person I'd call when I was upset. It wasn't just the timing that unnerved me. It was the way he knew these moments, these specific details about my life. It felt like he was keeping track of me, watching from the shadows. And then one day, I found it. I'd come home from work late, tired and drained from a long shift. I walked into my bedroom, tossed my purse on the bed, and sat down on the edge of it, ready to just collapse into sleep. But then I saw something that didn't belong there, a small black dot on the ceiling. At first, I thought it was just dust or something, but when I stood up and got closer, my stomach dropped. It was a camera, tiny, hidden in the corner of the room, so small and well placed that I almost didn't notice it. My heart started pounding in my chest. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think straight. I was too shocked to even process what I was seeing. It was one of those tiny cameras that you could buy online, the kind that could be hidden anywhere and used for God knows what. But I didn't need to ask myself what it was for. I knew Alex had been watching me. The realization hit me all at once. Every time I thought I was alone, every time I thought I was free, he had been there, watching, recording, keeping track of my every move. The phone calls, the whispers, the timing. Everything had been leading to this moment. I wasn't crazy. He was still in my life, still haunting me even after we broke up. And worst, I couldn't prove any of it. I yanked the camera off the ceiling and threw it in the trash, but that didn't make the feeling go away. It didn't stop the whispers or the phone calls. I couldn't escape him. I didn't know how long he had been watching me or how many times he had been there, hidden in the shadows of my life, taking notes, recording, stalking. I didn't know how deep this obsession went, and it terrified me. I moved out of that apartment as soon as I could, but the calls didn't stop. They followed me no matter where I went. No matter how many times I blocked numbers, they kept coming. And every time it sounded like Alex, whispering my name, always just a step behind me, always a reminder that the breakup wasn't the end. The last time I heard from him, it was a call I didn't answer. I didn't need to hear his voice again. I'd already lost everything to him. My peace, my sense of safety, my trust in the people around me. The breakup wasn't just the end of our relationship. It was the start of something much darker, something that still lingers even now. I wish I could tell you it ended there, but I can't. Because every so often, just when I think I'm free, I hear it. The whisper of my name, just a little too faint to ignore. Breaking up with Olivia was supposed to be easy. I thought it would be one of those we'll be better off as friends things, with no hard feelings and no drama. I was wrong. So wrong. I never expected what happened after to feel like I was living in some sort of twisted horror story. It all started pretty standard. We had been dating for a while, and over time, it became clear that we just weren't right for each other. Things felt off. We fought constantly, and it felt like we were holding on just for the sake of not being alone. I thought ending things would be the mature thing to do. I didn't think Olivia would take it well, but I never thought it would turn into something like this. After I told her it was over, she seemed to take it pretty hard. Of course, she cried and begged me not to end it, but I thought that was just part of the breakup process. I figured a couple of days of silence, some tears, and then she'd move on. It was over and I was ready to move forward. But Olivia didn't take it like an adult. She didn't take it like anyone should. She started showing up at my job. At first, I thought it was a coincidence. I would see her in the background when I was taking a lunch break or walking in my car. She'd be there standing in the corner, just watching. I would turn away quickly, trying not to make eye contact, but she was always there. It felt like she was always just lurking, keeping her distance, but still somehow watching me. At first, it wasn't that big of a deal. I thought maybe she was just having a hard time adjusting. But then the strange stuff started happening. I'd come into work one morning, and there would be a package waiting for me at my desk. It was small, unmarked, and wrapped in plain brown paper. Inside was one of my old shirts, one I hadn't worn in months. I didn't even remember giving it to her, but there it was, my shirt with a note that simply said, "For the memories." It was a weird and unsettling feeling, but I tried to brush it off. Then came more packages. Over the next few weeks, I received at least 5 more. Every single one contained something personal. A pair of my old socks I thought I had lost, a notebook I used to write in when I was in high school, a keychain I had gotten from a trip I took years ago. It was like she was collecting pieces of my life, things I hadn't seen in ages, and sending them back to me like it was some kind of sick game. I tried to ignore it, hoping she would just get the hint and stop. But every day she was there, always watching from a distance, just waiting for her next move. The worst part was the last package, the one that made me question everything. It came in the mail on a rainy Tuesday. It was bigger than the others, and it felt heavier when I picked it up. I almost didn't want to open it, but curiosity got the better of me. When I peeled back the brown wrapping paper, my heart sank. Inside the box was a bundle of hair. My hair. I didn't know what to think. How had she gotten it? It looked like she had collected it over time, strands of hair that must have come from when I was around her. But the real question was why? Why would she send this to me? What kind of sick game was she playing? My head was spinning. I didn't know what to do. I wanted to call the cops, but I didn't have enough to prove that she was stalking me or harassing me. I didn't even know how she was getting all this stuff. My old shirts, my hair, things that no one else could have known about. It felt like she was somehow invading my life, going through my personal things, watching my every move. It felt like I couldn't escape her, no matter what I did. I tried confronting her, but it was like talking to a wall. She'd show up at my job, stare at me from a distance, never speaking a word. The more I tried to push her away, the more she seemed to push back, creeping into every part of my life, every part of my thoughts. It was like she was everywhere, always a step behind me, watching, waiting. I started feeling paranoid. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't relax. Every time I heard a noise outside my window, I would jump. Every time someone walked past me, I turned to see if it was her. My life became a constant game of looking over my shoulder, wondering if she was there, just out of sight. I couldn't stay in my apartment anymore. I moved in with a friend, thinking that would be enough. But even then, I could feel her presence. I would get these strange, empty packages. No return address, just things that I had left behind, like she had somehow gotten into my apartment and taken them. Old tickets to concerts we had gone to, a random receipt from a cafe I had gone to by myself, things I never thought she would care about. It was like she was keeping a record of my every move, storing pieces of my life in some sick collection. I tried changing my phone number, blocking her on social media, but it didn't matter. She'd always found a way to contact me. Sometimes I would get strange emails with pictures of me, taken from far away, like she was watching me in public spaces. I couldn't escape it. I couldn't escape her. I started thinking back to when we were together, wondering if I had missed any signs. Had she always been this obsessed with me? Was I too blind to see it before? I didn't know. All I knew was that I couldn't live like this anymore. I couldn't keep looking over my shoulder every time I left the house. I eventually moved out of the city, hoping that distance would be enough. But I still wonder, did it stop? I don't know. I don't think it did. Every time the phone rings, my heart jumps. Every time someone knocks at my door, I freeze. I've tried to move on, tried to live my life again, but it feels like I'm always looking over my shoulder. And the worst part is, I still hadn't figured out how she knew about all those things, how she could have known so much about me. I don't know if she's still out there, still following me, but part of me is convinced that I haven't seen the last of Olivia. And that thought is the most terrifying thing of all. When Caleb and I broke up, I thought it was finally over. I had been thinking about it for a while, and the whole thing was just draining. We had this toxic back and forth for months, and I honestly thought we both needed space. So I ended it. Simple as that. Or so I thought. But as it turns out, that was only the beginning of something way creepier than I ever could have imagined. At first, everything seemed normal. I took a couple of days to clear my head and start getting back to my usual routine. It was messy at first, and there were definitely moments where I still missed him, but I figured it would all fade in time. I didn't expect any big fallout. Caleb wasn't the type to stalk or make scenes, or at least that's what I thought. Things started feeling off, really off. It started small. One evening, I came home from work and noticed my clothes had been folded neatly. Now, not some slob, but I definitely don't fold everything right after taking off. I didn't remember doing it, but I didn't think too much of it at first. Maybe I had just cleaned up earlier, and my memory was a bit foggy. But the weirdness didn't stop there. The next thing I noticed was that the bills that had been piling up on my kitchen counter were suddenly paid. Not only were they paid, but the receipts were neatly stacked, as if someone had made sure to handle it all. I remember feeling a small wave of panic. Who could have paid my bills without me knowing? I checked my bank account, and there were no weird transactions. I had no clue who was behind this. I tried to just brush it off. Maybe it was just a glitch, or I had paid them and forgotten. Maybe a friend of mine had done it as a nice gesture. But that night, it got worse. I went to my fridge to grab something to eat and noticed it was fully stocked. Normally, I wasn't the best at keeping groceries in the house, so the fridge was usually a sad sight with just a carton of milk and half a loaf of bread. But tonight, it was like someone had gone out of their way to fill it up. All the things I usually bought were there: fruit, eggs, even the weird frozen meals I liked on lazy nights. But the strangest part, I didn't remember buying any of it. I didn't want to freak out, but I couldn't stop thinking about the things that had been happening. Was I sleepwalking and doing things without realizing it? No, that didn't make sense. I was fully aware of everything around me. So who the hell was messing with my apartment? Then came the photo. I had just gotten out of the shower one evening, still trying to figure out what the hell was going on with my life, when I noticed a picture on my coffee table. It was face down, and I figured it was just something from a friend or maybe a stray photo I didn't recognize. I flipped it over. My heart nearly stopped. The photo was of Caleb. He was asleep on my couch, his face relaxed in that way he used to look when he was peacefully knocked out. But there was something about the angle that made my stomach turn. It was taken from behind him, like someone was standing in the room, just watching him sleep. It was an unsettling shot, like a voyeuristic moment frozen in time. What made it even worse was that Caleb was on my couch in my apartment. I wasn't there. I didn't even know he had come into my place. That's when everything clicked. Somehow, Caleb had been in my apartment, but how? Had he been coming here without me knowing? It was a sickening thought, but the evidence was right in front of me. He had to have been the one leaving all this stuff behind: the folded clothes, the paid bills, the fridge stocked with food. It was like he had been living here, quietly taking care of things, without me even noticing. I felt this surge of panic and anger. How could he do this? How long had he been doing this without me knowing? I tried to reason with myself, but the feeling of being watched was too much. I couldn't shake it. I started looking through the apartment. I checked every drawer, every closet, under the bed, in the bathroom. I was desperate to find something, anything, that would give me an answer. And that's when I found it. Behind the books on my shelf, there was a small hidden compartment. I don't even remember putting it there, but I knew it wasn't me who had done it. Inside the compartment were more pictures of Caleb. Pictures of him in my apartment, in my kitchen, in my bedroom, and worst of all, more photos of me while I was asleep. It made my skin crawl, the thought that he had been in my home while I was unaware. It was like a sick invasion of privacy. But the worst part, there were pictures from the night we broke up. I had been so focused on trying to move on, trying to get back to my routine. But Caleb had been following me. Every time I thought I was safe, every time I thought I could finally breathe, he was there. I had no idea how long this had been going on, but the evidence was all around me. I couldn't stay in that apartment anymore. I couldn't shake the feeling that Caleb was still watching me, that he knew everything I was doing. My life had become a twisted game to him, and I had no idea how to get out of it. I moved out the next day and I changed all of my passwords, hoping to lock him out of my life for good. But no matter how much I tried to block him out, I kept wondering if he was still out there, lurking in the shadows, just waiting to make his next move. I'll never forget the feeling of finding that photo of Kayla on my couch, the realization that he had been in my home without me knowing. It was the beginning of something terrifying, something I still don't fully understand. All I know now is that when a relationship ends, it's not always the end. Sometimes it's just the beginning of a whole new kind of nightmare. It was supposed to be one of those clean breaks. Sophie and I had been together for a while, and while it wasn't always easy, I figured it was one of those things where we both just wanted different things. We talked it through, agreed it was best to part ways, and even joked about how we both move on, no hard feelings. I thought I'd never hear from her again, and for a while it seemed like that was true. But things slowly started getting weird. At first, it was small, insignificant things that I brushed off. A car parked outside my apartment building late at night, nothing too suspicious. People park outside all the time. But then I realized it was Sophie's car. I didn't think much of it at first, figuring it was just a coincidence. Maybe she was visiting a friend nearby or just out for a drive. But the next day it happened again. And the next. At random hours, sometimes early in the morning, sometimes around midnight. Sophie was always there, just sitting in her car watching. I tried to convince myself it wasn't that big of a deal. I mean, we had broken up, but we were still on good terms, right? She was probably just getting her own closure, just taking a moment to process everything. But the more I saw her parked outside, the more I started to feel uneasy. I could never catch her at the right time, and I couldn't understand why she was always there. But then came the grocery store incident. I was walking down the aisles minding my business when I noticed her. Sophie was standing at the end of the aisle, barely a few feet away, staring right at me. At first, I thought maybe she was just coincidentally in the same place, but something felt off. I walked past, trying to act like I hadn't seen her, but I could feel her eyes on me. I glanced back for a second, and she hadn't moved an inch, just standing there watching. But she didn't say anything, didn't approach me, didn't make a sound. She just stood there, silent, as if she was waiting for something. I hurried out of the store, not knowing what to think. A few days later, I had the first letter. I don't know why, but when I saw it in my mailbox, something about it made me feel sick. It wasn't anything strange at first glance, just a plain envelope, no return address, nothing to indicate who had sent it. But I recognized her handwriting immediately. It was like she was speaking directly to me, trying to justify what she'd been doing. In the letter, she told me she needed closure, that she couldn't move on until she fully understood why we broke up. But as I read, my stomach dropped. Sophie had written about things I hadn't told her, details from conversations I'd had with friends, places I had gone to alone, things I had done after the breakup that I hadn't mentioned to anyone. How did she know? It felt like she was everywhere I went. I thought maybe it was just a coincidence again, but then the letters kept coming, each one more unsettling than the last. She would mention things that were so personal, so private, things I hadn't shared with anyone. She talked about moments I had with my friends, places I visited without her. Hell, she even wrote about a random conversation I had with my sister about how I felt about the breakup. It felt like she was tracking me, reading my messages, somehow listening in on everything. It was insane. The worst part, the last letter she sent. It was a detailed account of a day I had spent alone. She described how I went to the park, sat on a bench, and watched the sunset by myself. I didn't tell anyone about that day. In fact, I hadn't even planned it. I just went to clear my head, and now Sophie knew all about it. It was too much. She was keeping tabs on me, and I had no idea how long it had been going on. Was she following me? Was she tracking me somehow? I started looking over my shoulder all the time. Everywhere I went, I felt like she was just out of sight, waiting, watching. I thought maybe I was being paranoid, but I couldn't shake the feeling that she was always there. It wasn't just her card anymore, or the strange letters. It was the way she seemed to be able to pop up exactly where I was. If I went to the coffee shop, there she was, sitting at a table in the back corner. If I went to the park, I'd see her walking in the distance. She wouldn't approach me, wouldn't say a word. She'd just be there like some ghost I couldn't escape. I tried blocking her on social media, but somehow I'd still get random messages, strange comments on old pictures, and likes on posts I hadn't thought anyone would notice. It felt like she was still keeping track of my life, even when I tried to shut her out. The worst part, she never confronted me. She never tried to get back together or make me feel guilty. It was like she was keeping her distance on purpose, just watching from afar, waiting for me to crack. At this point, I knew I had to do something. I couldn't go on like this. The letters were escalating, and I couldn't keep pretending like it was just a coincidence. One day, I decided to take a different route home from work, just to see if she'd still be there. I was convinced she'd be waiting. And sure enough, when I turned the corner, there she was, her car parked on the street outside my apartment building, just sitting there like usual. But this time, there was no mistaking it. Sophie was watching me, waiting for me to notice her again. I didn't know what to do anymore. The breakup was supposed to be the end of it all, but it felt like it was just the beginning of a nightmare. No matter what I did, she wouldn't leave me alone. It was like she had become obsessed with this idea of closure, but instead of letting go, she was slowly turning into this haunting presence in my life. And the worst part, I had no idea how to get her out of it. I never opened the last letter she sent. It still sits unopened in my drawer, a reminder of how things went so wrong. And I still wonder if Sophie is out there, still watching, still waiting. When I ended things with Max, I honestly thought that would be the end of it. I mean, we'd been together for a while, but our relationship wasn't perfect, and I didn't see any reason to drag things out if I wasn't feeling it anymore. We had a pretty normal breakup, no drama, no fighting, no tears. Just a simple, it's not working out, and that was it. I thought I could go back to living my life without any weirdness, without any drama. I couldn't have been more wrong. It started small at first, with things that might have seemed like coincidences. I remember one morning I was scrolling through my phone, just catching up on some texts, when I saw a message from a friend. It wasn't anything urgent, just a casual text asking how I was doing. But when I went to reply, I noticed something strange. The little read receipt was there, even though I hadn't opened it yet. Maybe it was a glitch, I thought, but I didn't pay it much mind. Then the next day it happened again. Another message from a different friend, another read status, even though I hadn't checked it. At this point, I started getting a little uneasy. Was my phone glitching, or was someone else reading my messages? The next few days were worse. I'd noticed that some of my apps were acting weird. My Instagram was showing notifications I hadn't seen before, like I already liked posts, but I didn't remember doing that. I'd find comments on random pictures of mine, ones I hadn't posted in months, and I was sure I hadn't written them. It was like someone else had been scrolling through my social media, liking posts, and even commenting on things I had long forgotten about. I tried to ignore it at first, but I was just being paranoid, but it kept happening. One morning, I logged into my bank account. Everything seemed fine at first, just the usual bills, rent, and expenses. But then I saw something that made my heart stop. There was a charge for something odd. A pizza order, one that I definitely didn't make. I figured it must have been a mistake, but when I checked the details, I was hit with another surprise. The charge was for over $1,000, and the description said it was for 1,000 boxes of pizza. 1,000. It was absurd. I had no idea how or why this had happened, but the more I looked, the more I realized it wasn't just one charge. There were other weird transactions, stuff I didn't buy, all linking back to my account. I had this gut feeling, a sickening one, like everything pointed to one person, Max, but there was no way he could have gotten into my accounts. I changed all my passwords, updated my security, and did everything I could to make sure my information was safe. But that didn't stop the strange occurrences. It just kept happening. A few days later, I started getting calls from random numbers. At first, I ignored them. The calls kept coming. I had no idea who they were from, and I didn't feel like dealing with it. But the thing that really freaked me out wasn't the numbers. It was the voice on the other end. It wasn't even clear at first, just static and whispering, but I swear I heard my name. I thought I was just imagining it, so I hung up. But then it happened again the next day, and the next. Every time, it was the same thing, just whispering, low and distorted, but always my name. The final straw came when I was sitting in my living room, just trying to unwind after a long day, when there was a knock at my door. It wasn't late, but it felt off. I looked through the peephole and froze. Standing on the other side of my door was a pizza delivery driver holding a stack of pizza boxes. I had no idea what to do. I didn't order pizza. I didn't know who would have ordered it. I opened the door cautiously, and the driver just stood there, his expression blank. "I've got a delivery for you," he said, his voice flat. 1,000 boxes. I almost laughed. It sounded ridiculous, like a prank, but I didn't feel like laughing. I stepped back, opening the door just enough to get a better look. Sure enough, there were 1,000 boxes of pizza stacked behind him, filling up the entire hallway. The smell hit me like a wave. Cheese, sauce, pepperoni. I could hardly believe it. I turned and looked at the pile, trying to process what was happening. Before I could say anything, the delivery guy handed me a slip of paper with Mac's name on it. I felt my blood run cold. There was no mistaking it. Max had somehow ordered 1,000 pizza boxes to my address. I had no idea how, but he had done it. I was frozen, staring at the receipt, unable to wrap my mind around it. I didn't even know what to say or what to do. It wasn't just a prank. This was something else entirely. I immediately called the delivery company to try and cancel the order, but they wouldn't refund me. They said the order was placed and paid for, so it wasn't their problem anymore. I had no idea what to do with all the pizzas. I couldn't just leave them there. So I had to start calling people, friends, neighbors, asking if they wanted any pizza. But every time I threw a box away, there were more showing up. It was like an endless supply. I was seriously starting to lose it. I didn't know how Max was doing this, or how he was still involved in my life after I had made it clear we were done. It wasn't just the pizzas, it was everything. The weird calls, the feeling of being watched, the strange transactions. It was like he was haunting me, controlling parts of my life from a distance. I tried to report it to the authorities, but by the time they looked into it, the orders had stopped coming. Max had vanished. I changed my number, shut down my accounts, and moved to a different apartment. But sometimes when I open my email or check my social media, I still get strange notifications. Pizza orders from random places, old messages from Mac's number, things that make me question if I'll ever truly get rid of him. It's been months and I still don't know how he did it. But I learned one thing: a breakup isn't always just a breakup. Sometimes it's the beginning of a nightmare you never saw coming. Breaking up with someone is never easy, but I always figured it would be a pretty standard deal. A little sadness, a few awkward conversations, then you both move on. But with Laura, it was like I walked into a storm I never saw coming. It started off normal enough. We'd been dating for about a year, but things just weren't working anymore. We'd grown apart, and I knew it was time to end things. Simple, right? Not with Laura. When I told her I wanted to break up, I could feel the atmosphere in the room shift. There was this heavy silence. I swear I could hear my heartbeat echoing in my ears. Laura didn't cry, didn't even seem upset. Instead, her face went blank like she was processing something, deciding what her next move was. She stood there for a few seconds, just staring at me. I had no idea what she was thinking, but I knew that I had to leave. I didn't want to drag it out. Then she did something I'll never forget. She looked me dead in the eyes and said, "If you leave me, I'll tell the cops you hurt me. I'll say you abused me, and you'll be arrested." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It wasn't like a cry for attention or some weird emotional outburst. It was cold, calculated. She was threatening me, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. I didn't react right away. I just stared at her, trying to process the threat. My mind was racing. I knew Laura had her issues, but this was something else. I had never hurt her, never done anything that would even remotely give her the right to say something like that. She was bluffing, right? She had to be. I told her I wasn't going to play along with that game. I wasn't going to be manipulated. But then she did something even crazier. She picked up her phone and dialed 911 right in front of me. I couldn't believe it. I stood there frozen for a moment, watching her as she spoke to the operator. She was so calm, so assured of herself. I thought for sure she was just trying to scare me. But when she hung up, she looked at me with that same blank stare and said, "You'll see. They'll arrest you." I felt the blood drain from my face. I had no idea what to do. I wanted to fight back, say something, but I didn't want to escalate things. Instead, I said, "Fine." I didn't know what else to say. I wasn't going to get into some back and forth argument with her. I just wanted her out of my life, and I wanted to go back to my normal routine. Not even an hour later, there was a knock at the door. I was pacing in the living room, trying to process everything when I saw two police officers standing outside. Laura had followed through on her threat, and my stomach sank. The officers asked me if I'd been in a relationship with Laura, and when I said yes, they started questioning me about the abuse allegations. My head was spinning. I tried to explain everything, but it felt like they weren't really listening to me. That's when I remembered something: my home security cameras. I'd installed cameras in the living room, mostly for peace of mind, just to keep track of things around the house. It wasn't anything crazy. I wasn't paranoid, but it was nice knowing I had proof if anything weird ever happened. I ran to the room where the footage was stored and quickly pulled up the video from earlier that day. What I saw made my heart race. There on the footage was Laura standing in the living room looking right at the camera. She was calm, speaking into the phone as she told the operator that I had hurt her. She even pointed to the walls, talking about things that didn't happen. In the video, she was staging the entire scene, trying to make it look like I was an abusive partner. I couldn't believe my eyes. I immediately ran back to the door, the footage in hand, and showed it to the officers. Their expressions changed instantly when they saw the video. They asked if I could provide more evidence, and I said I had the full footage of the interaction. They told me to hang tight as they stepped outside to talk. A few minutes later, they came back with a different look on their faces. They'd spoken to Laura again, and from what they gathered, it seemed she was only making things worse for herself. They checked her story and cross-referenced the video with her claims, and everything just didn't add up. They apologized to me, told me they'd be pressing charges for false accusations, and then, well, they arrested her. It was surreal. One minute, I was standing there in my living room, feeling like my world was falling apart. The next, I was standing in the doorway watching as Laura was led away in handcuffs. I didn't even know how to feel. I should have been relieved, but I wasn't. I was shaken, still in disbelief that someone I trusted, someone I'd been in a relationship with, could do something like this. The weeks that followed were a blur. I had to deal with the fallout, rebuilding my reputation, making sure everyone around me knew the truth. It wasn't easy, and there were moments where I questioned whether the video was enough to prove my innocence. But I kept reminding myself that the cameras had caught everything. I had the proof. Eventually, Laura was charged with making false statements to the police and attempting to cause harm by fabricating a story. It wasn't just the legal battle I had to face. The emotional toll of being falsely accused weighed heavily on me, even after everything was resolved. I didn't know how to trust anyone the same way again, how to believe that people weren't capable of lying just to get what they wanted. I eventually moved on, as you have to do when you've been through something like that. But I'll never forget that feeling of being completely blindsided, of having someone threaten your entire life, just because they couldn't accept the end of a relationship. Sometimes I still find myself looking over my shoulder, wondering if something like that could ever happen again. It all started after I broke up with Tessa. I wasn't expecting it to be easy, but I also didn't think it would spiral into something like this. The breakup wasn't dramatic or anything. We'd just grown apart, and I figured that was that. I packed up my things, moved out, and tried to start fresh. Little did I know, Tessa wasn't going to let me go that easily. At first, it was just small things. I'd come home from work, and there would be a box sitting on my doorstep. It wasn't anything huge, just a plain cardboard box. I didn't think much of it at first, assuming maybe it was some old package or something mistakenly delivered to my place. I brought it inside, opened it up, and found my old hoodie in there, the one I had left at her place a couple of months ago. I didn't get it. Why was my hoodie here? I thought I'd lost it a long time ago, and I couldn't remember the last time I even thought about it. But it wasn't just the hoodie. Inside the box was also a note. The handwriting was unmistakable. It was Tessa's, and it read, "I'm still here." I stared at the note for a good while, trying to make sense of it. At first, I thought it was just her way of trying to get closure, or maybe she thought returning my stuff would make everything okay. But the words didn't sit right with me. I'm still here. That wasn't a message of closure. It was a message that left me unsettled. I tossed the box and hoodie aside and tried to forget about it. But over the next few days, more packages started showing up. The first one was a book. It was a book she had borrowed from me months ago, right before we broke up. I hadn't even realized it was missing until I found it sitting on my doorstep, wrapped in brown paper like some weird gift. I opened it, and sure enough, it was that same book, covered in the same smudges and dog-eared pages I remembered. And then, just like before, there was a note. "I know what you're doing." What did that even mean? I didn't understand. It wasn't like I had been doing anything out of the ordinary. I was just living my life. But every time I got one of these items, that nagging feeling in my gut kept growing. It wasn't just the stuff that made me uneasy. It was the fact that Tessa knew things she shouldn't. The fact that she was still watching me. And the notes, each one felt more personal, like she was in my head, watching my every move. One day, I came home to find a package waiting for me again. This time, it was a scarf, my scarf that I had left at her apartment a while ago. I knew exactly when I'd left it there, and I had completely forgotten about it until now. But this wasn't just any scarf. It was the same one I wore the night we had our first date. I remember it because she'd laughed when I took it off that night, saying I looked like I was trying too hard to be mysterious. I hadn't worn it since that night. I opened the box and there it was, the scarf, wrapped in tissue paper with another note. I can't let go of you. I didn't know what to think anymore. This was getting out of hand. It wasn't just her returning things. It was her way of saying she was still here, still a part of my life, even though we were over. I started locking my door every night, checking the security cameras and making sure all my windows were shut tight. But nothing worked. The packages kept coming. One evening, about a week after the scarf showed up, I came home to find the door to my apartment slightly ajar. My heart dropped as I walked inside, looking around for any sign of forced entry. But nothing seemed out of place. That's when I noticed the small, flat package on the kitchen counter. I was sure I hadn't left it there. I cautiously approached it, and when I opened it, I found something I hadn't expected at all. It was a photo of me. It wasn't a recent photo, but one from a few weeks ago, taken right after I had moved out of Tessa's place. The photo was of me sitting on my couch, just relaxing after a long day. I didn't remember anyone taking it, but what sent a cold rush through me was the angle. It was taken from behind, like someone was standing in my living room watching me. The strangest thing, I didn't hear anyone when I was home. I always thought I was alone. I quickly flipped the photo over, hoping to find some explanation or a note, but this time there was nothing. I stood there for a long time, holding the photo, trying to make sense of it. How did she get in here? How was she getting so close to me without me even knowing? I thought maybe I was losing my mind, but deep down I knew something wasn't right. I started avoiding my usual places. I stayed home as much as possible, didn't go to the cafe where we used to meet, didn't take the same route to work. I tried to be smart, hoping that by changing my routine I could throw her off. But every time I thought I was safe, another package would show up. Another note would appear. And then one night, just as I was about to go to bed, my phone buzzed. I looked at the notification, and my heart skipped a beat. It was a message from an unknown number. The message was short and simple. I'm watching you. That's my new. I had to confront this. I couldn't just hide anymore. The next morning, I reached out to the police and explained everything. I showed them the notes, the photos, everything. I wasn't sure they would take me seriously, but after I told them about the constant feeling of being watched, they agreed to look into it. I had already started to make copies of everything. Photos, notes, anything I could get my hands on. A few days later, I had another package. This time, though, something felt different. I opened it up, expecting the usual creepy message. But when I saw what was inside, my blood ran cold. It was a single key. The key had no label, no explanation. I had no idea what it went to. But I was done. I wasn't going to let this go on any longer. I called the cops and gave them the key, hoping they could trace it back to something, anything that could lead me to Tessa. And that's when I found out she'd been keeping a spare key in my apartment all along. The key fit the lock on my back door. The cops found evidence that she had been entering my apartment for weeks while I wasn't home. That was the moment I realized how far she had gone. It wasn't just the notes or the packages. She had been living in the shadows, stalking me, and I had no idea. Tessa was arrested, and the madness stopped. But even now, when I walk into my apartment, I always check the locks, always check the corners of the room. Because I know she's still out there somewhere, and part of me will never be able to fully let go of the terror that followed me long after she did. It started like any other relationship. Mia was sweet, loving, and everything I thought I wanted in a partner. At first, everything felt perfect. She was warm, attentive, always had my back, and made me feel special in ways I hadn't experienced before. I was head over heels. But then things started to get weird, and I just couldn't put my finger on it. I didn't even know how to explain it at first. I first noticed it one night when I went to check my bank account. Something had seemed off for a few weeks. I was spending more money than usual. I wasn't living extravagantly, so I couldn't understand where all the money was going. But I pushed it to the back of my mind, thinking maybe I was just imagining things. I mean, I had been distracted, busy with work, and hanging out with Mia more often. Maybe I had forgotten about some small purchases, right? But then it happened again. And again. One night, I sat down, grabbed my phone, and logged into my bank account. What I saw made my stomach drop. There were transactions I didn't recognize. Some were small. Others were a bit bigger. At first, I tried to brush it off, thinking I had just missed something. But the pattern kept happening. I kept checking, and each time it was the same. There were charges I didn't remember making. That's when it hit me. Mia had been filing my taxes behind my back, pocketing the refunds and slowly, quietly taking over every part of my financial life. She wasn't just a part of my world anymore. She was controlling it, manipulating me from the shadows. I went into full panic mode, scrambling to figure out how to fix the mess she'd made. The more I looked into it, the more I realized how deep her control had gone. She had access to every account I owned, every detail of my finances, and I had no idea how long it had been happening. How long had she been pulling the strings? I couldn't even remember when it started. Was it months ago? A year? She had been there in my life, pretending to be the woman I loved while, behind the scenes, she was taking everything from me, piece by piece. I couldn't believe I hadn't seen it sooner. All the signs had been there. I should have known, should have paid attention, but I was too in love, too blinded by the image of her I had created. She had built a facade so perfect that I couldn't see the monster underneath. Eventually, I broke up with her. I couldn't keep living like that, constantly wondering what else she was hiding, what else she had taken from me. I told her I needed space, that I couldn't trust her anymore. But the most terrifying part, even after all of it, after everything I had uncovered, I couldn't escape her. She was always there, lingering in the background, a shadow that never fully disappeared. I still don't know how she did it. I don't know how she had access to everything, how she manipulated me without me even realizing it. All I know is that Mia wasn't just a part of my life. She was controlling it from the inside out, and I didn't even know until it was too late. Maybe that's the scariest thing of all, when someone can make you think they're your everything, while secretly destroying you from the inside. I never believed in ghosts or anything like that. I used to think people who claimed to have been haunted were just going through stress or some emotional thing. That was until it happened to me. I don't know if I want to believe it still. The stuff I went through after breaking up with Maria was so messed up. It makes it hard to just dismiss it all. Maria and I were together for almost a year. Things were great at first. She was fun, easygoing, and we clicked. But after a while, it wasn't working anymore. I couldn't pinpoint exactly why, but the magic was gone. We ended things on decent terms, or at least I thought we did. She was upset, but she understood. We both needed space. At least, that's what I told myself. 2 months after the breakup, I had a call that no one ever wants to get. Maria had been in a car accident. The news hit me hard, but I didn't know how to process it. We hadn't been talking much since the breakup, so it felt distant, like hearing about someone else. But the shock was real. She was gone. It felt like a punch to the gut, even though we weren't together anymore. I went to the funeral, paid my respects, and left it at that. At least that's how it was supposed to end. A couple of weeks later, I started noticing things that didn't make sense. It started small, like a feeling that something was off. I was just at home minding my own business, trying to get back into a routine. Then one night, out of nowhere, I smelled her perfume. It was the same one she always wore, this floral, musky scent. I wasn't even thinking about her when it happened. It just hit me like a wave while I was sitting on my couch, watching some random show on TV. I couldn't understand how it could smell like her in my apartment, especially when I knew I hadn't seen her in months. I tried to shake it off. Maybe it was just me being paranoid. I've been under a lot of stress lately. Work had been crazy, and I wasn't sleeping well. Maybe it was just a memory coming back, triggering some weird sensation. But then I started hearing things. It wasn't loud, and it wasn't like someone was in the room with me, but I started hearing whispers at night. At first, I thought it was the wind or something else outside, but the more it happened, the more I realized it wasn't. It was her name. Maria. The voice was soft, like it was coming from far away. Every time I heard it, my heart would skip a beat. It felt like she was trying to get my attention, but there was no logical reason for it. She was dead. Gone. I didn't tell anyone at first. I thought I was just losing my mind. But it didn't stop. The whispers kept coming, and every time they did, a damn perfume smell would follow. It was like she was still here. But how? One night, I woke up to my phone buzzing. Half asleep, I reached for it, thinking it was just a work email or a text from a friend. But when I saw the message, my blood ran cold. It was from Maria's number. I couldn't believe it. It wasn't just a random message either. It was personal. It was like she was talking to me like she was still alive, like she had never left. I miss you, it said. I want to be with you again. I'm sorry I never got to fix things. I love you. My heart started pounding, and I sat up in bed, staring at the screen in disbelief. I could feel a cold sweat forming on my neck. Maria couldn't have sent this. She was dead. I figured it was a mistake, maybe someone messing with me, but the messages kept coming. The next one was even more detailed. I can't leave. You have to know how much I need you. Why did you leave me? I can't move on. The more I read, the more I felt like I was losing my grip on reality. How was this possible? I tried to reach out to her family. Maybe they had some explanation, some strange glitch in the system. When I spoke to her brother, he sounded as confused as I was. He told me that the phone had been turned off after the funeral, that no one had been able to use it. I even asked if there was any chance of it being some kind of sick prank. He had no answers. He told me that it was impossible for her to be sending those texts. But the messages didn't stop. In fact, they got worse. They became more urgent, more personal. She started talking about our breakup, the things we had said to each other. She mentioned details that no one else could have known. I was losing my mind. How was this happening? Why was this happening? I wasn't even sure I wanted answers anymore. I was too terrified of what those answers might be. I started to feel like she was everywhere. It wasn't just the texts or the perfume. It was the constant feeling that she was watching me. The whispers at night grew louder, like she was calling my name from right next to me. Sometimes I'd hear my own name whispered, but I'd be alone. Other times I'd be in the kitchen, and I could swear I saw her reflection in the window, only to turn around and see nothing. Every corner of my apartment started to feel haunted. One night, I was sitting on my couch trying to convince myself that this was all just a weird stress response when my phone buzzed again. Another message. I'm still here, it said. I can't leave you. You'll never be alone. I dropped the phone. It felt like a weight on my chest, and for the first time since all this started, I felt pure, unfiltered fear. I had to do something. I didn't know what. I couldn't keep living like this with her ghost haunting my every move. I moved out of my apartment, thinking that maybe the space was the problem, but the feeling never left. I kept hearing her name, smelling her perfume, getting messages that weren't possible. Eventually, I moved to a new city, changed my number, tried to start fresh. It's been months since I've felt her presence like that. The messages stopped, and the whispers finally faded away. But I still can't shake the feeling that somehow, in some way, Maria is still out there, lingering in the space between the living and the dead. I don't know if it's just me holding on to her memory, or if something else is at play, but I can't forget what happened. I don't know if she's really gone, and I'm not sure I ever will. After I broke up with Caroline, I never thought I'd be haunted by her. I mean, sure, breakups suck, but it wasn't anything out of the ordinary. We'd been together for almost a year, but over time, I realized things just weren't working. It was a mutual decision, nothing dramatic, no huge fight or anything. We just grew apart. At least, that's how I thought it was going to be. The first couple of weeks after we split were typical. I spent my nights hanging out with friends, keeping myself busy trying to move on. But then something strange started happening. It started small, so small that I brushed it off at first, thinking it was just a coincidence. I'd be walking down the street, headed to my favorite cafe, and there she was, Caroline, sitting at the same table by the window, sipping her coffee like she was just another regular customer. I figured it was a coincidence. She probably liked that cafe too, right? It wasn't some exclusive spot. But then it happened again and again. I went to the park, a place I used to go to clear my head after a long day. And out of nowhere, there she was again. Caroline, sitting on the same bench I always sat on, reading a book I used to talk about all the time. My stomach dropped. I felt this weird, creeping unease, but I told myself it was just a coincidence. It couldn't be anything else. People go to parks. People sit on benches. People read books. It didn't mean anything. But it didn't stop. In fact, it started to get worse. I noticed that Caroline wasn't just showing up in places I frequented. She started wearing the exact same outfits I wore. Not in the she bought something similar way. No, this was different. She was wearing the exact same shirts, the same jeans, the same shoes. Even the jewelry I used to wear. It wasn't like I was imagining it either. I could tell. She'd be at the coffee shop, wearing a sweater I used to wear all the time. Or at the grocery store, picking up the same brand of cereal I always bought. It was eerie. And she wasn't just doing it once or twice. It was every time I saw her. I tried to convince myself it was just a coincidence. People wear the same clothes, right? But the more I saw her, the more it felt like she was trying to become me. It was like she was copying my life, piece by piece. I couldn't understand it. It wasn't just about looking like me either. It was how she started acting too. She would repeat things I had said months ago like it was a script she'd memorized. I started to feel like I was being replaced or maybe even erased, like I was losing myself. It all came to a head one afternoon when I walked into the local bookstore I always went to. It had been my favorite place for as long as I could remember. But that day when I walked in, I saw her sitting at the table in the back, reading a book I'd bought just a week before. It wasn't even a book I'd mentioned to anyone. I hadn't posted about it, hadn't told a soul. It was just something I picked up on a whim. And there she was, sitting in my spot, reading it like she was me. I walked around the store pretending to look at other books, but my eyes kept flicking back to her. It was like I was drawn to her in some way, like I needed to understand what was going on. The worst part, she didn't even seem to notice me. She didn't look up once. It was like she was so absorbed in being me, in taking my place, that she didn't even care that I was standing there, watching her. I couldn't take it anymore. I decided to confront her. Not in some dramatic, let's sit down and talk kind of way, but I had to at least ask her what the hell was going on. I texted her, telling her to meet me at the cafe we used to go to. I needed to understand if this was some weird, twisted form of closure, or if she had lost her mind completely. When she showed up, it wasn't even her, not really. She looked like her, but something was off. The way she sat down at the table, the way she crossed her legs, it was all too familiar. Too much like me. She wasn't Caroline anymore, she had morphed into something else. She wasn't just copying me, she was becoming me. And it was terrifying. I tried to talk to her, to get her to explain what was going on, but all she did was smile. This weird, empty smile, like she was playing a part in some script. She kept repeating things I had said to her during our relationship, word for word. It was like she had studied me, like she was trying to embody everything I was. It felt suffocating. After that meeting, I couldn't sleep. It was like she had taken over every part of my life. I kept seeing her at all the places I used to go, wearing my clothes, repeating my words. It was driving me insane. I tried to block her number, but somehow she kept getting through. I would wake up to texts from her that seemed normal at first, but the more I read them, the more it felt like she was trying to wear me down. She would tell me how much she missed me, how she wanted to make things work again. But it wasn't her talking. It was like she was just using my words to manipulate me, trying to get under my skin. I started to lose track of what was real and what wasn't. I didn't know if I was being paranoid or if she was actually trying to take my life. Everywhere I went, she was there, creeping into my routine. It was like she had found a way to crawl inside my mind and take over. Eventually, I moved. I had to get away from everything, from the places she kept showing up, from the constant reminders of how she was copying me. I moved to a different city, changed my phone number, tried to erase everything that had been caroling. But even now, I wonder if she's out there somewhere, still following me, still trying to become me. I don't know if I'll ever truly escape. I don't know if it's just me losing my mind or if she really has become something else, something darker. All I know is that after I broke up with caroling, my life stopped being mine. Breaking up with Olivia was supposed to be the end of everything. I had no idea how wrong I was. When we ended things, it was messy, but it seemed like the typical stuff. You know, the usual arguments, unresolved feelings, and then an inevitable separation. I thought I'd move on. I thought she would too. I didn't realize the full extent of her anger until I started noticing strange things happening to my body. It started slow, almost unnoticeable at first. I woke up one morning with a bruise on my arm. Not a big one, just a little purple spot, but it was sore. At first, I brushed it off as something that happened while I slept. Maybe I knocked into the nightstand or something. I didn't think much of it. But over the next few days, it kept happening. Bruises would appear out of nowhere. Sometimes it was on my arms, other times on my legs or my stomach. They were small but noticeable enough for me to question how they got there. I didn't think Olivia was still capable of hurting me. After all, we had broken up. Why would she be causing me pain? But then things got weirder. I started waking up with scratches. Long, thin ones that looked like fingernails had dug into my skin. They weren't deep, but they were too precise to have been self-inflicted. It was like someone had done it deliberately, and it wasn't just a one-time thing. It happened repeatedly. I went to see my doctor, but they couldn't find any explanation. I asked if it was a medical condition or maybe some kind of psychological issue, but they dismissed it. Stress can do strange things to the body, the doctor said. I thought that maybe I was just imagining it all, but deep down I knew something was off. I couldn't explain the bruises, the scratches, or the bloodstains on my sheets. I woke up one morning, my sheets soaked with something red, and it wasn't just a little spot. It was a full stain, as if I had been bleeding during the night. I panicked. I checked myself over, trying to figure out where it came from. But there was no cut, no injury. I called my doctor again, but they said there was no reason for me to be worried. It could be stress, they suggested again. But how could stress cause blood to appear on my sheets? And why was I never aware of it happening? I tried to tell my friends about what was going on. They thought I was overreacting, being dramatic. I didn't blame them. I mean, if I hadn't been living it, I probably wouldn't believe it either. But the thing was, I wasn't making it up. This was happening to me, and it felt like something was crawling under my skin, something I couldn't control. But the real horror didn't hit me until I got the package. It arrived one afternoon wrapped in plain brown paper. No return address, nothing to tell me who it was from. I opened it carefully, thinking maybe it was just some junk mail or a weird gift from a friend. But what I found inside made my blood run cold. Inside the package was a small plastic bag, and in it, there were several locks of my hair. Not just a few strands, chunks of it. It was my hair. There was no mistaking it. I had never seen anything so horrifying in my life. I didn't know what to think. I was frozen, staring at the bag in my hand. My mind raced, trying to piece everything together. How had someone gotten my hair? Why would they send it to me? My heart began to pound. My first instinct was to call Olivia, but then the realization hit me like a slap to the face. Olivia. She had been the only person who had been close enough to me, someone who had known me inside and out. She knew my routines, my habits, the way I thought. And that's when it clicked. Olivia wasn't just angry about the breakup. She wasn't just sad or heartbroken. She had been drugging me. I remembered the nights I'd spent with her after we broke up, times when she would insist I stay over at her place, telling me I needed to rest. It was strange at the time. I hadn't felt like myself when I was around her, but I didn't think much of it. I just thought I was still emotionally drained from the breakup. But now looking back, I could see it. The way she made me tea or slip me something in my drink. It wasn't obvious at first, but as the months went on, I could feel it. There was this foggy, distant feeling every time I was with her, like I wasn't really there. I had never questioned it at the time, but now it was all clear. Olivia had been drugging me in small doses, altering my perceptions, making me forget what happened during those nights. She had been taking control of me in a way that I couldn't even comprehend. The bruises, the scratches, the bloodstains, they were all part of it. She had been manipulating my memories, controlling me in a slow, methodical way. She had turned me into a puppet, and I had no idea until it was too late. As I sat there, holding the bag of hair, I felt sick. I felt violated. I felt like I was losing myself, my identity, to someone who had once loved me. She wasn't just trying to get revenge on me for breaking up with her. She was slowly erasing me from my own life, twisting everything I knew until it became unrecognizable. I tried to reach out to people, but no one took me seriously. They thought I was overreacting like I always had. I couldn't get anyone to understand. I couldn't explain the way Olivia had wormed her way into my life, how she had stolen pieces of me without me even realizing it. I was terrified. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know if I could ever escape her. The worst part was that I wasn't sure if she was really gone. She had left me a gift, a reminder that she was still there, still watching, still controlling. I don't know how long this will go on. I don't know how to stop it. But one thing is clear. Breaking up with Olivia didn't end our relationship. It just opened the door for something far darker to take over. And now I have to live with the constant feeling that I'm being watched, manipulated, and erased by someone who's supposed to be a part of my past. I should have known the breakup wasn't going to be clean when Ethan handed me that sealed envelope. I had ended things with him because of his jealousy. It had gotten out of hand. There was always someone he thought I was too close to, something I did that he didn't like, or a place I went that triggered his insecurities. It wasn't healthy, and after a while, I couldn't take it anymore. So we broke up. It wasn't easy, but it seemed like the right thing to do at the time. Then came the envelope. The day after we ended things, I found it sitting on my doorstep, tucked into the corner near the doorframe. I wasn't expecting anything from him, and the way it had been placed there, just sitting there so casually, set off a little warning bell in my head. I didn't open it right away. I left it there staring at it, wondering what it could possibly be. Maybe he had some final words to say, or maybe it was his way of trying to keep some control over the situation. When I finally picked it up, the weight of it surprised me. It wasn't just paper. There was something inside. I tore open the envelope with a strange mix of curiosity and dread, and out came a small box wrapped in tissue paper. When I opened it, I almost couldn't believe my eyes. It was a necklace. The one I had admired months ago when we'd been in a jewelry store together. I'd pointed it out, talked about how pretty it was, how it reminded me of something from my childhood. Ethan had promised to buy it for me, but never did. In fact, I had long forgotten about it. But here it was. The exact necklace I'd seen in that store, wrapped in a way that seemed almost too perfect. I didn't know what to feel. I wanted to believe that it was just a kind gesture, some last attempt to make things right. But the problem, I already had that necklace. It was mine. I'd bought it years ago, long before I met Ethan. I didn't understand how or why he had it, but something about it made my skin crawl. My fingers ran over the delicate chain, the same one I'd worn many times. But now it felt like a sick joke, like he was trying to rewrite history, trying to put his mark on something that had always been mine. The unease I felt was just the beginning. The next morning, I opened my front door to find a letter sitting on the ground, neatly folded in half. I didn't even need to open it to feel the weight of what it could be. I could feel my heart start to race as I slowly unfolded the paper inside. "I know everything about you," it said. The words were simple, direct, and terrifying. I stared at it for a long time, my mind trying to process what I was reading. How could he possibly know everything about me? What did he mean by that? We had been together for months, but there was no way he knew everything about me, right? I didn't want to freak out. I didn't want to believe it. But deep down, something in my gut told me this was just the beginning. And I was right. Every day after that, it seemed like another package arrived. Sometimes it was a box, other times it was just an envelope, but each time, it felt like something from my past that I couldn't escape. At first, it was small things. A childhood toy I had kept hidden in the attic for years, one that I had long since stopped caring about. I didn't even remember where it came from anymore, but there it was, wrapped up and placed on my doorstep as if it had been there waiting for me all along. Then came the letters, personal ones I had written to my family when I was younger. Letters I had forgotten I even had. I remember my mom and I used to exchange letters when I was away at camp, but those had long been tucked away in a drawer, gathering dust. Yet there they were, each letter wrapped in tissue paper, carefully arranged as though he knew exactly where to find them. And it didn't stop there. One day, I opened a box to find a book. It was one I had loved as a kid, one I'd read over and over until the pages started to fall apart. I had lost it years ago during a move, and I never thought I'd see it again. But somehow there it was, the same worn cover, the same yellowing pages, like he had known that book meant something to me. At first, I thought maybe it was just coincidence, some weird game he was playing to try to get me back. I thought it was his way of showing me that he cared, that he had been paying attention to the little things. But then I started to realize that it wasn't just about the objects. It wasn't about the things he was sending me. It was about what they represented. Ethan wasn't sending me gifts. He was sending me pieces of myself. He was forcing me to relive my entire life, piece by piece, memory by memory. The things he was sending me weren't just objects. They were fragments of my identity, my past, my memories, my most personal moments. And he wasn't just returning them to me. He was reshaping them, making me question whether they had ever truly been mine to begin with. The more I thought about it, the more I realized what he was doing. He wasn't just trying to get me back. He was trying to erase me. Every gift, every item, every letter. It was all part of a twisted attempt to replace my memories with his own version of me. He wasn't sending me the things I loved. He was sending me a distorted version of myself, a version that belonged to him, a version that had never existed. It became clear to me that Ethan wasn't just trying to manipulate me into coming back. He was trying to rewrite my life, piece by piece. Each gift was a reminder of what I had been, what I had loved, and what I had lost. And with every piece he sent, he was stealing a part of me, replacing it with his own warped narrative. He wasn't just trying to get me back. He was trying to make me forget who I was. The last package arrived a week ago. Inside was nothing but a small black box. It was empty. No note, no gift. Just a reminder that at the end of it all, he had already taken everything. I looked at the empty box, and for the first time in weeks, I realized the truth. Ethan hadn't just been sending me memories. He had been stealing them. I don't know what he wants. Maybe he's done with the gifts. Maybe he's trying to erase me completely. But I do know one thing. I don't know who I am anymore. And I don't know how much of me is left for him to take. I thought breaking up with Brian would be the end of it. I really did. We were on and off for a while, but the final breakup felt like the last straw. His jealousy, his anger, it was all too much. When I finally ended things, I figured that would be the end. I'd be free to move on, finally free of the emotional weight he'd put on me. But then the notes started showing up. At first, I thought it was some sort of weird coincidence. Maybe I had left a journal or a personal note somewhere and forgot about it. But they kept coming, slipping under my door, tucked into the corner of my car window, or shoved into my mailbox. The first one just said, "I miss you." I didn't know what to make of it, so I shrugged it off. It could have been anyone, right? Maybe someone from my past, just trying to get my attention, trying to make me think it was Brian. But deep down, I knew it wasn't that simple. As the days went on, the notes started getting more specific. "I know what you did last weekend," one of them said. How did he know that? I hadn't even told my closest friends what I had been up to. I thought I was being paranoid at first, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. It wasn't just the strange notes. I started hearing his voice. On the phone. It was always the same. I'd pick up, the line would crackle for a few seconds, and then there'd be this breath like someone was standing right next to me. But there was no one there. It happened over and over again. The first time, I tried to convince myself that it was just a wrong number, or maybe a telemarketer. But then it happened again, and again. Always the same pattern. I hear his voice, or what sounded like his voice, but no one would ever speak. No words, just breathing, as if he was waiting for me to say something. It was creepy, but I tried to ignore it. I had to. I was trying to keep my life together, trying to move on. I didn't want to get sucked back into whatever this was. But then the notes started becoming even more unnerving. They weren't just random anymore. They started to predict things, things that hadn't happened yet. "I know you're seeing someone new," one note said. "You'll fall in love, but it won't last. You'll end up alone again." It was chilling. I hadn't told anyone I was seeing someone, not even my best friend. I hadn't even thought about it much, but now it felt like everything I did was being watched. I couldn't escape it. It wasn't just about Brian anymore. It felt like he was always there, lingering in the background, like he had found a way to tap into every part of my life without me realizing it. Every decision I made felt like I was being manipulated, as if he was controlling my actions and thoughts, making me do things just so he could watch them play out. I remember one night I was lying in bed, unable to sleep, thinking about the mess I'd gotten myself into. It felt like I was trapped in a nightmare. And that's when the phone rang again. I didn't even look at the caller ID. I knew who it was before I even picked it up, but I had to. I needed to know if I was really hearing things, or if my mind was just playing tricks on me. I pressed the phone to my ear, and there it was, his voice. But this time it wasn't just breath. There were words, soft and almost drowned out by static. "You think you can escape me," it said. "You'll never be free." The line went dead after that, and I just sat there staring at the phone in my hand. My heart was pounding. It was one thing to get a no, but to hear his voice again, to feel like he was still somehow lurking in the corners of my life. It was enough to make my skin crawl. The next day, I tried to be rational. I told myself that maybe I was just stressed, maybe I was overthinking things. But then the notes started getting even more detailed. "I know what you dream about," one note said, describing in vivid detail a nightmare I'd had a few nights earlier. How could he know that? How was he getting inside my head like this? It wasn't just the notes anymore. I felt like I was losing control of my own life. Every decision I made seemed to be influenced by something I couldn't see, something I couldn't explain. It was as if Brian had found a way to reach into my mind, pulling the strings and controlling the narrative of my life. I started to question everything. Was I still making my own choices? Or was Brian somehow pulling the strings behind the scenes, orchestrating my life like a twisted puppet show? One of the most unsettling notes came after I started seeing someone new, just like the note had predicted. It wasn't anything serious, but I liked him. I just started to relax to enjoy myself again when new note arrived. I know you're happy now, but it won't last. You'll leave him just like you left me. It was as if he had some sort of hold on me, some power to shape my future, and was helpless to stop it. The more I tried to fight it, the more I realized how deep this was going. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It wasn't even about him trying to win me back. It felt like something darker, like he was trying to break me, to make me feel like I could never escape him. I started losing track of what was real and what was just my head. The notes kept coming. The phone calls never stopped. And the worst part was the feeling that Brian was always there, watching me, waiting for the right moment to strike. It's been weeks now, and I don't know how much longer I can handle this. Every time I think I've escaped, I'm reminded that Brian isn't really gone. He's still there in the shadows, manipulating my life from afar, and I don't know how to stop it. It feels like I'm living in a nightmare I can't wake up from, a nightmare where Brian is always just a step behind me, controlling everything I do, everything I feel, and everything I am. I thought I was done with James. After everything, his jealousy, his constant control over my life, I finally worked up the courage to end things. I thought it would be the hardest part, but it turned out it was just the beginning of a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I didn't expect anything major after our breakup. Maybe some awkward run-ins or him sending a few angry texts. But nothing could have prepared me for what came next. It all started slowly, almost like a slow burn. At first, it was little things. I lost my job at the cafe I'd been working at for years. The manager, who I'd always gotten along with, suddenly turned cold toward me. It was like someone had whispered something in her ear. Rumors started to spread about me, stuff I hadn't even done. One of the rumors was that I'd been caught stealing tips. That was something I'd never even considered doing. But the worst part, the rumors were about things only James could have known. I tried to brush it off, told myself it was just a coincidence. People talk, right? But I couldn't shake the feeling that James was behind it somehow. Then came the bank account. I woke up one morning to find that my savings, the money I had worked so hard to set aside for my future, was gone. Every penny. And the strangest thing, the transactions were so calculated, so precise, that it looked like it had been happening over weeks, little by little, without me noticing. Whoever did it knew exactly when to take money out, and they always left just enough so I wouldn't realize until it was too late. I thought about calling my bank, but the numbers didn't add up. The transactions were from an account I didn't recognize, yet they didn't seem suspicious on the surface. It was like whoever was doing this had access to everything in my life. By this point, I was freaking out. My friends, the few I still had left, started acting strange around me. They'd give me weird looks like they knew something I didn't. It felt like they were all pulling away one by one. I tried to ask them what was going on, but they would just shrug it off or give me a vague excuse about being busy. The more I tried to hold on to them, the more distant they became. It didn't make sense. The people I had trusted, my support system, were disappearing right in front of me, and I had no idea why. The final straw came when I was going through some old paperwork in my apartment. I was trying to clean up, get my life back in order, when I found a document tucked away in a folder I didn't even remember having. It was a life insurance policy. My name was on it. My heart dropped into my stomach when I saw the name of the beneficiary, James. He'd taken out a life insurance policy on me long before we broke up. And it wasn't just any policy. It was a large sum, one that would only pay out if something happened to me. Something like a staged accident. The pieces all clicked together in that moment. The rumors, the money gone from my account, my friends slowly turning away. All of it was part of a plan. James had never intended for us to stay apart. He'd been setting everything up, pulling the strings behind the scenes. It wasn't just a breakup. It was a carefully planned scheme, all so he could collect the insurance money. And it didn't stop there. He had engineered my life to fall apart piece by piece so he could inherit everything I had. I felt sick to my stomach, realizing that everything, every strange event in the past few weeks, had been orchestrated by him. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was realizing that he was still in control. I hadn't escaped him. He had planned this from the start, and I was walking straight into his trap without even realizing it. I needed proof. I needed to know what he was planning and how far he was willing to go. I spent the next few days trying to piece together what had been happening. I went back through all of the strange notes and phone calls I'd received. There was always something off about them, something I couldn't put my finger on at the time. But now with everything I had learned, I could see it clearly. James had been controlling everything, from the rumors at work to the money disappearing from my account to my friends turning their backs on me. It wasn't just about getting rid of me. It was about taking everything I had and making it look like an accident. He was slowly turning my life into a mess, hoping I'd break down and make a mistake. That was his plan. He wanted me to slip up so he could swoop in, collect the insurance money, and walk away with everything. I realized I couldn't let him win, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized I didn't know how to stop him. He had already set things in motion. All the groundwork had been laid, and I had no idea what to do to stop him before it was too late. One night, after I got back from trying to talk to my boss about the rumors, I came home to find another package waiting for me on my doorstep. Inside, there was a single piece of paper with the words, "It's already started." My heart skipped a beat. I wasn't sure what he meant, but I knew it couldn't be good. I immediately called the police, but they brushed me off. They said there wasn't enough evidence for an investigation, and I couldn't prove any of the things I was saying. I couldn't go to my friends. They were already so distant, and the more I tried to reach out to them, the more I felt like I was losing control. It wasn't just that he had planned this. It was that he had already executed it. He had started the process. He had set everything in motion, and I was just a pawn in his game. James had never planned to let me go. And now I was starting to realize that there was nothing I could do to stop him from getting exactly what he wanted. When I ended things with Daniel, I thought that was the end of it. It was messy, sure, but nothing I couldn't handle. He had been obsessing over every little detail of my life, and I had enough. He couldn't seem to understand that we weren't meant to be, and no matter how many times I tried to explain, he just wouldn't listen. I thought breaking up with him would be the hardest part, getting it through his head, then moving on with my life. But I was wrong. Dead wrong. A few weeks went by after the breakup, and I thought the worst was over. I had started to feel like myself again, like I could finally breathe. I was spending more time with my friends, getting back into the groove of things, and honestly, I thought I was finally free of the suffocating hold he had on me. That was until one night when I came home late from work. I didn't notice anything at first. The house was quiet, normal. I was just exhausted, and my mind was somewhere else, and I fumbled with my keys. But then I noticed something off. The door wasn't fully closed. It was only slightly ajar, but that was enough to make my heart skip a beat. I stood there frozen for a second, wondering if I was imagining things or if I had forgotten to lock the door. But no, I knew I had locked it. I was sure of it. I hesitated for a moment, but curiosity, mixed with a little fear, got the best of me. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The house smelled the same as always, faintly of lavender and old books. Nothing unusual at first glance, but then I heard it. Soft breathing. It was coming from somewhere inside, and it was so quiet I could barely make it out. I froze in the doorway listening. It didn't sound like a pet or the air conditioner turning on. It was the unmistakable sound of someone exhaling slowly, rhythmically, like they were trying to stay hidden. I couldn't figure out what to do. My first instinct was to turn and run, but I didn't. Instead, I slowly crept through the living room, my heart pounding in my chest. I wasn't even sure why I was being so cautious. Maybe I was hoping I was imagining things, that it was just some weird sound playing tricks on me, but deep down I knew better. When I reached the hallway, I could hear the breathing louder now. It was coming from my bathroom. I don't know why, but I felt like my legs couldn't move, like they were frozen in place. But eventually, I made myself take a step, then another, until I was standing just outside the bathroom door. The breathing was clearer now, but there was something about it that sounded off. It wasn't just someone sitting there quietly. It was like they were waiting for something. I don't know what made me open the door. Maybe it was the fear. Maybe I thought if I opened it, I could make sense of whatever was happening. But when I flicked the lights on, I saw him. Daniel. He was standing there completely still, in front of the mirror, staring at his own reflection. His eyes were wide open, and he wasn't blinking. He wasn't doing anything but staring. He wasn't even breathing normally anymore, just a soft, almost hypnotic rhythm. I called out to him, but he didn't respond. I moved closer, thinking maybe he didn't hear me, but I froze when I realized he was completely unaware of my presence. It was like he was in a trance, lost in his own reflection. I tried to speak again, but my voice felt weak, distant. My hand reached for my phone, and that's when I finally snapped out of it enough to call the police. I was trembling now, my fingers fumbling over the numbers. I don't even know what I said when they answered, but they told me to stay where I was until they arrived. It didn't take long. I heard the sirens soon after, and that's when Daniel finally turned his head slowly, almost like he was waking up from a deep sleep. But when his eyes met mine, it was like I didn't recognize him anymore. He didn't look angry or hurt like I thought he would. He just looked lost, like he had no idea what was happening. The police got there within minutes, and Daniel didn't fight them when they asked him to leave. He followed them outside without a word. I stood there in complete shock, unsure of what had just happened. The officers explained that they couldn't arrest him. Technically, he hadn't done anything illegal. Sure, he was trespassing, but there was no breaking and entering since I hadn't locked the door properly. He wasn't a threat, they said. He was just mentally unstable. I wanted to scream at them, to tell them that he had been stalking me, that this wasn't just some innocent mistake, but I couldn't. The words wouldn't come out. Instead, I just stood there in disbelief, watching as they left and Daniel was led away. His eyes never left mine, not once. The next few days were a blur. I kept expecting it to be a bad dream, to wake up and have everything go back to normal. But it didn't. I kept hearing strange noises at night, things that couldn't have been explained. And I kept feeling like someone was watching me, like Daniel was still there, lingering just out of sight. I kept checking the locks on my doors, and every time I go to bed, I hear that soft breathing again. It was never as loud or clear as before, but I could always feel it like it was right behind me. I tried changing my routine. I locked every door, every window, double-checked everything. But I never felt safe. I couldn't sleep, couldn't concentrate. I even started to doubt myself, wondering if I had really seen Daniel that night or if it was just my mind playing tricks. But no matter how hard I tried to convince myself it wasn't real, I couldn't shake the feeling that Daniel was still out there, watching, waiting. I don't know what he wanted from me, but I couldn't escape him. It felt like no matter what I did, he was always just one step behind. The breakup hadn't been the end. It was only the beginning of something worse than I could have ever imagined. After I ended things with James, I thought it would be the end of it. We had been through so much, constant fighting, his obsession with controlling everything I did, everything I said. I honestly thought that once I broke up with him, I'd finally be free. I could breathe again. I could live my life without looking over my shoulder, without having to explain myself. But that was before the messages started showing up. At first, it was nothing too crazy, just a few strange posts on my social media accounts. I hadn't posted anything, but there they were, messages, pictures, and status updates that seemed to come from nowhere. The thing was, they didn't seem random. They were about me, but things I hadn't shared with anyone. Little details about my life, things I hadn't told a single person. They were so specific, it was like James was right there beside me, following my every move. It was creepy, but at first, I convinced myself I was just overthinking it. I blocked him on everything. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, you name it. I thought that would be the end of it. But the posts kept coming. One night, I logged into my Facebook account and found a new message. This one on my wall. Saw you at the cafe today. Red jacket suits you. The barista was cute, pa. I hadn't even been to a cafe that day. I was at home, binge watching a series on Netflix, trying to forget about everything. I felt the hair on the back of my neck stand up. How could he know where I was? I didn't waste time trying to figure it out. I immediately checked my phone. Everything looked fine, but as I was scrolling through my notifications, I noticed something strange. An app I didn't remember downloading was on my home screen. It was a tiny, nondescript icon that just said track. At first, I thought it might have been some glitch, but when I clicked on it, my stomach dropped. The app showed a map. Not of the city, not of the country, a location. It showed my movements. A real-time location. My phone was tracking me. I stared at the screen for a moment, feeling the blood drain from my face. I scrolled through the app's history. There it was, every step I'd taken. Every place I'd been in the last few days, right down to the exact spots I'd visited. I even saw the places I had just walked past. It was as if James had been watching my every move, and I wasn't just imagining it. He had planted something on my phone, something that gave him access to everything. I panicked. How had he done this? How long had it been going on? I went to check my phone's settings to see what apps had permission to access my location, and sure enough, the app was in the list. But there was something else, something that made my stomach lurch. The app didn't just track my location. It also had access to my microphone, my camera, and my contacts. He had been listening to me, watching me, probably even reading my texts. My heart was pounding in my chest. The next few hours were a blur. I tried everything, restarting my phone, deleting the app, factory resetting it, but nothing worked. The messages kept coming. The strange posts kept appearing. He knew things I hadn't told anyone. He knew what I wore when I went to the store. He knew what I said when I had lunch with a friend. He even knew what I dreamed about the night before. He was everywhere, even when I didn't want him to be. I knew I had to confront him. This wasn't just a creepy ex-boyfriend being a little possessive. This was next level. This was stalking. So I reached out to him, thinking if I could get him to admit what he had done, it would stop. I thought I could finally end it for good. When I confronted him, he didn't even seem fazed. His response was chilling. He told me he was just looking out for me because he knew I'd make the same mistakes again. I felt nauseous. He claimed that everything he did was to protect me, that he was just watching over me like he had always done. It was like he thought he had some right to control me, even after everything that happened between us. I told him to stay away from me, that I would go to the police if he didn't stop. But the worst part, it didn't end there. After I blocked him on everything again, after I cut all contact, the messages kept coming. Every day I'd check my phone, and there would be a new post, a new message, describing what I was doing. One post even mentioned a new guy I was talking to. He had predicted that too. I didn't know how he was doing it, but it was clear he had found a way to hack into my life. He had planted himself so deeply into my world that I couldn't escape him. I tried everything to stop it. I changed my passwords, switched phones, even moved to a new apartment. But still the messages came. It didn't matter how many times I blocked him or how many times I changed my information. He always found a way in, and my life wasn't mine anymore. It was like James had embedded himself into every part of it, every corner of my world. It wasn't just the posts or the messages. It was a feeling. The constant feeling of being watched, being followed. I couldn't go anywhere without thinking he was there, right behind me. I couldn't relax. I couldn't sleep. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart would race, hoping it wasn't him again. But it always was. The worst part, I don't think it will ever stop. I've tried everything to get rid of him, to escape, but he's still there, lingering in the background, always watching. And I don't think I'll ever truly be free of him. He's always one step ahead, controlling the narrative of my life, turning my world into something I can't escape from. The worst part of it all, I know he's watching me write this right now.